The room was a pristine white capsule, a silent tomb of advanced technology. In its center, suspended in a zero-gravity field, floated the massive form of the being they called Kalen. Tubes, thin as spider silk and infinitely more complex, connected to hundreds of points on his body, feeding a carefully calibrated cocktail of sedatives directly into his bloodstream. Monitors displayed a cascade of data, a symphony of biological functions that were being forcibly suppressed. For 3 years, the medical frigate Harbinger of Mercy had been his prison, his keeper, and his warden. Dr. Anya Sharma watched him through the thick observation window, her reflection a ghost superimposed over his sleeping form. He wasn't human. He was a Vorth, a species renowned for their physical prowess and a terrifyingly fast metabolism that could heal wounds in hours and process toxins in minutes. It was that very metabolism that had necessitated this. Kalen was a warrior. A high-ranking commander from a species humanity was tentatively calling the Skan. The war between humanity and the Skan had been brutal, a 3-year conflict of attrition fought across barren asteroid fields. Kalen had been captured during a boarding action, found unconscious in a ruptured bridge, his body a mess of broken bones and third-degree plasma burns. Under normal circumstances, he would have healed. But the circumstances were far from normal. The first week he was awake, and he had bent the reinforced steel bars of his cell into a pretzel and nearly killed 4 guards. His strength, combined with the sheer terror of being a prisoner, made him an uncontrollable asset. The order had come from the highest level: contain him, but keep him alive. The drug-induced coma was the only answer. It was a necessary evil, Anya had told herself for 3 years, a humane alternative to death. But today, the numbers on her screen were changing. She tapped her earpiece. "Say, engineering, this is Medbay. I'm showing a pressure drop in the main sedative reservoir." A crackling voice replied, "Copy that, Doc. We see it. It's a microfracture in the primary line. We've isolated the section, but the backups, they're running on a different compound, a slower release formula. It won't be as effective." Anya's blood ran cold. "How long until the new compound reaches his system?" "Already there. He'll be groggy for a bit, but the deep sleep is over. You've got maybe 6 hours until the metabolic accelerants in his system burn through the backup and he wakes up completely. We're working on a bypass, but it's delicate." 6 hours. She looked at the mountain of a man in the tank. 6 hours until a living weapon woke up in the heart of a human ship. She turned from the window, her mind already racing through protocols, sedatives, and contingency plans. The quiet hum of the infirmary suddenly felt like a countdown. Anya didn't panic. She was too good a doctor for that. Instead, she began to work. Her first move was to flood the system with a mild, fast-acting sedative as a supplement, buying them perhaps another hour. Then she called for a security detail. 2 hulking soldiers in power-assisted armor took up positions inside the infirmary, their weapons trained on the floating form. They looked nervous, their fingers twitching near the triggers. Anya couldn't blame them. The stories of Vorth's strength were legion. Now she spent the next hour poring over Kalen's medical file, not as a prisoner's chart, but as a patient's. The sane were a mystery. Humanity knew their ships, their weapons, their tactics, but their biology, their psychology. It was all extrapolated from battlefield data. This was the first live specimen anyone had gotten their hands on. As the hours crawled by, the monitors began to change. The deep rhythmic waves of the brain scan began to show spikes, the peaks of consciousness fighting against the chemical tide. His muscle tissue, dormant for so long, started to show faint signs of micro-contractions. The drug was losing. 4 hours in, his eyes opened. It wasn't a dramatic monster movie awakening. It was a slow, gradual thing. The eyelids, heavy with the remnants of the drugs, fluttered once, twice. Then they opened. The eyes were a deep, luminous gold, and they were utterly disoriented. They scanned the white room, the blinking machines, the armed soldiers, and finally they settled on Anya. There was no rage in them yet, just a profound confusion and a deep, bone-weary exhaustion. Anya took a slow, deliberate step forward, holding her hands out, palms open. "You are on a human medical vessel," she said, her voice calm and clear. She didn't know if he understood English, but she had to try. "You were severely injured. We have kept you alive." The Vorth's gaze didn't waver. He tried to speak, but his voice was a dry rasp. A sound like stones grinding together. He tried to move, and the zero-G field held him fast, but the attempt was enough. The armored soldiers raised their rifles, the servos in their suits whining. "Stand down!" Anya snapped, her authority absolute in her domain. She turned back to Kalen. "Don't try to move. You've been in a medically induced coma for a long time. Your muscles will be weak. Your body needs to relearn how to function." The gold eyes blinked slowly, processing her words. Oh, he understood. He spoke again, his voice a little stronger but still rough. "How long?" 3 years? The information hung in the sterile air. 3 years. A third of a short war. His entire world had changed while he slept. The confusion in his eyes deepened, and for the first time, a flicker of something else appeared. Fear, not for himself, but a deep existential dread of what he had lost, of the time that had been stolen from him. He was a warrior, a commander. His place was with his people, not floating in a stranger's medical bay. Anya saw that fear, and it changed her perspective. This wasn't just a weapon powering up. This was a sentient being waking up to a nightmare. The next 2 hours were a tense stalemate. Anya spoke to him constantly, explaining his physical state, the ship's systems, anything she could think of to build a bridge of communication. He listened, his eyes following her every move. The soldiers remained, silent and alert. The engineers finally patched the line, but Anya made a decision. She didn't re-administer the full sedative. She couldn't. To put him back under now, after he had tasted consciousness, felt like a crime. Instead, she offered him water, a specially formulated nutrient paste. He accepted hesitantly, his massive, 3-fingered hands moving with surprising delicacy to take the cup she held up to him. It was a small act of trust, a crack in the wall between captor and captive. Then, the alarms blared, a deafening ship-wide klaxon. Red lights began to strobe in the corridor outside. A voice crackled over the ship's intercom, tight with barely controlled panic. "All hands! Battle stations! Unidentified Skane battle group exiting FTL on our port side. I repeat, this is not a drill." The 2 soldiers in the room snapped to attention, their eyes wide. Anya's heart hammered against her ribs. A Skane battle group. His people, here to rescue their commander. Or here to ensure he was never rescued. They were a medical frigate, unarmed and slow. They had no chance of outrunning a warship. Kalen heard the words. He saw the fear on the soldiers' faces, the sudden tension in Anya's shoulders. He understood. His people had come. He slowly turned his head, his golden eyes locking with Anya's. He saw the doctor's hands, stained not with the blood of war, but with the antiseptic smell of a healer. He saw the fear in her eyes, not for herself, but for the hundreds of sick and wounded crew in her care. He saw the humanity in her. He looked at the 2 soldiers, their weapons now trained not just on him, but on the door, ready to defend against an outside threat. They were scared, too. They were just people. Kalen closed his eyes for a long moment. When he opened them, the confusion and fear were gone. In their place was a heavy, terrible certainty. He looked at Anya and spoke, his voice a low rumble. "Patch me through, to your communications array. I will speak to them." Anya stared at him. Why? He met her gaze. Because you did not kill me when you could have. You woke me and you gave me water. You treated me like a patient, not a prisoner. He gestured weakly with his massive hand towards the flashing red lights. Out there, they will not show such mercy. They will not know you have done this. They will see only a human ship and destroy it. Let me tell them. It was a gamble. A terrible, an impossible gamble. He could be asking for a comm unit to give his people the ship's schematics, its weak points. He could be planning to shout a war cry that would doom them all. Anya looked at him, into those luminous gold eyes. She saw a warrior, yes, but she also saw a man who had been given a choice, to be treated as a beast or as a being, and he had chosen to remember the latter. She turned to the soldiers. Get the portable comm unit, now. The senior soldier hesitated. In his face, a mask of conflict. That's an order, Lieutenant. Moments later, a small holographic projector was placed near Kalen. He spoke into it, his voice a series of guttural clicks and resonant tones that the ship's computer struggled to translate. He spoke for a full minute, his gaze never leaving Anya's. Then he fell silent. On the bridge, the comm officer relayed the translated message, her voice trembling. He's identifying himself as Commander Kalen of the Skane Fleet. He's stating he is alive and unharmed. He's ordering them to stand down. He's saying this ship and its crew are under his protection. He's telling them the humans saved his life. A tense silence enveloped the infirmary. The only sounds were the hum of the machines and the distant, dying echo of the alarm. On the view screen, the 3 Skane warships hung in the void like predators, their weapons charged and aimed. Then, as one, their weapon systems powered down. And they held their position for a long, breathless moment, then slowly, gracefully, began to turn. They didn't fire, they didn't attack, they simply left. The harbinger of mercy was safe. Anya let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. She looked at Kalen. He was slumped in the 0G field, the effort of speaking and the emotional toll of his choice draining the last of his strength. He looked at her, a ghost of a smile touching his lips. A healer's hands, he rasped. They are more powerful than a warrior's. Anya didn't know what to say. She simply reached out and placed her hand on his massive forearm, a gesture of thanks that transcended species. The medication had run dry, and in its absence, something far more powerful had been revealed. The shared language of mercy. The war wouldn't end today, but on a small medical frigate, a single profound crack had appeared in its foundation, and from that crack, a seed of something new had begun to grow.